Ukraine has been employing the Army Tactical Missile System, also pronounced ATACMS. They were used against Russian targets in occupied Ukrainian territory for over a year. These missiles have been used to strike air bases in the occupied Crimean Peninsula and military positions in the Zaporizhzhia region. However, the United States had previously prohibited Ukraine from deploying these long-range missiles inside Russia until now. The Lockheed Martin ballistic missiles, among the most powerful provided to Ukraine, have a range of up to 300 kilometers, which translates to around 186 miles. The shift in U.S. policy reportedly comes in response to the recent deployment of North Korean troops to support Russia in the Kursk border region, where Ukraine has held territory since August. Let's take a closer look at why the ATACM is considered such a high-value asset for Ukraine. First, let's consider the M777 Howitzer. While it is a cost-effective artillery system, it has a relatively limited range of just 25 miles, which is approximately 40 kilometers. This makes it effective for battlefield operations but restricts its reach to targets closer to the front lines. Next, we have the HIMARS, or High Mobility Artillery Rocket System. This system effectively doubles the range of the M777 Howitzer, extending its reach to about 50 miles. This is approximately 80 kilometers. Finally, we come to the ATACMS Army Tactical Missile System. The ATACMS significantly outclasses both the Howitzer and HIMARS in terms of range, capable of striking targets up to 190 miles, approximately 300 kilometers away. This range allows Ukraine to penetrate deep into Russian-controlled territory, targeting critical infrastructure, logistics hubs, and command centers. Let's compare this with the Russians' artillery. First, we have the Soviet-era D-30 Howitzer. This is a towed artillery system with a range of approximately 13 miles, which is around 22 kilometers. Next, we have the Russian self-propelled artillery gun. This system employs a move-and-shoot strategy, allowing it to quickly reposition after firing, making it harder to target. It has a range of about 25 miles. This is roughly 40 kilometers, giving it an edge over older systems like the D-30 by combining mobility and firepower. Moving further up the range spectrum, we have the BM-30 Smerch multiple launch rocket system. It can deliver powerful salvos over a range of 45 miles, which is around 70 kilometers. Finally, Russia holds a significant advantage with the Kinzhal missile. This missile can be launched from the ground or air, typically from fighter jets, and boasts an extraordinary range of approximately 2,000 kilometers, around 1,242 miles. Let's take a quick look into the ATACMS missile and its variants. This missile was designed to operate from two platforms, HIMARS and MLRS. HIMARS carries one missile pod, whereas the M270 carries a two-section pods. Let's explore the basic tactics and maneuvers involved in launching this missile. Step 1. The Lockheed C-5 Galaxy aircraft transports the MLRS to a designated safe location. Once loaded, it can be rolled on and off this aircraft and becomes operational within 15 minutes of landing. Step 2. The crew unloads the MLRS along with the reloader and launchers. Step 3. The battalion travels nearly 70 kilometers or 40 miles closer to the front lines. Step 4. The control and command center designate targets to be destroyed. Step 5. In high-threat situations, the MLRS utilizes a shoot and scoot capability to enhance crew and platform survivability. The MLRS capacity to deploy, shoot, move, and reload within minutes significantly impedes an enemy's ability to locate and target the firing platform. Step 6. The MLRS and HIMARS conduct reload operations using a reload arm assembly to reload missiles. Ukraine needs this long-range missile because they had invaded the Russian Kursk region by cutting through a small town in Sutsa. This caught the Russian army by surprise, and what's particularly interesting is that they accomplished this with just a small mechanized brigade. These brigades included around 11 main battle tanks and 20 infantry fighting vehicles, such as the American Bradley and the 8-wheeled armored fighting vehicle Stryker, along with a significant number of FPV drones costing only $1,000 each. These drones can cause havoc and help damage or destroy tanks like the Russian T-90, which costs around $4.5 million each, shifting the tide on the battlefield. The Ukrainian forces, instead of attacking head-on, executed this invasion by maneuvering around heavily defended checkpoints, and attacking the enemy from the rear. This strategy caught the Russian army by surprise while reinforcements were cut off by HIMARS artillery systems, thus enabling them to take over 1,000 square kilometers, which translates to around 386 square miles. This is indeed a large area for Ukraine to defend. The Russians experienced a complete intelligence failure regarding the Ukrainians. For the last 2 months, Ukrainian troops have been slowly amassing. To avoid suspicion, they began adding troops in small groups over time. Ukraine knew it could not compete head-on with the massive Russian army in its backyard, so instead of launching a direct attack, they adopted a different approach. This gradual buildup allowed them to remain undetected. However, Russian bloggers were already reporting the military buildup to Russian generals. Despite these reports, the activity was dismissed as a deception meant to draw Russian forces away from Pokrovsk into Ukraine. Now, speaking of strategy, let's take a look at how they managed to pull this off. The Ukrainians employed one of the most tried and tested strategies: concentration of force. Given that the Ukrainian army was much smaller than the Russian army, only about 10% of its size, they had to be strategic. Approximately 800,000 Russian soldiers were stationed along the borders, waiting for the right moment to launch an offensive and crush Ukraine. So the Ukrainians counterattacked and identified a weak spot in the Kursk region, mobilized all their troops to execute a flanking maneuver, and focused on taking control of the single checkpoint. After securing it, they regrouped with their current forces and mechanized armor to re-engage and eliminate the remaining checkpoints. They repeated this process over and over until all Russian pockets of resistance were destroyed. It's a clever strategy that made their army appear much larger, just like what some of the greatest commanders in history have done, also known as defeat in detail. To better understand the strategy, let's look at the numbers from each country. Russia had 1,320,000 active soldiers ready for combat, supported by a reserve force of 2 million. Supplementing this core military strength were 250,000 paramilitary units, adding a formidable layer of defense to the nation. Meanwhile, Ukraine maintained a strong military presence with 900,000 active soldiers. In reserve, 1,200,000 citizens stood ready to defend their homeland, bolstered by 100,000 paramilitary units, all prepared for the challenges ahead. Let's take a look at this mechanized brigades and the various vehicles used during the attack. Interestingly, the tip of the spear might be the Soviet-era RS-77 mine-clearing vehicles. So how does it work? The mine-clearing system operates by opening the lid and launching a line charge filled with explosives over this minefield. Once the line charge is in place, it is detonated, creating a shockwave and blast pressure that either neutralizes or detonates any mines within the vicinity of the explosion. As a mechanized brigade, they rely on main battle tanks like the Ukrainian T-84, which is based on the Soviet-era T-80 tank. These are often accompanied by the more common T-64 tanks, a model introduced in the early 1960s during the Soviet era. At least one infantry fighting vehicles, such as the Bradley, will also be heading the convoy. Interestingly, during the Gulf War, M2 Bradleys destroyed more armored vehicles and tanks than the M1 Abrams. As a mechanized brigade, they were also supported by the American Stryker, which can also be used as a command and control as well for carrying troops and infantry units during assaults. However, the BMP-1 also makes up a significant portion of the mechanized fighting vehicles, along with this BTR-80. This is an 8x8 wheeled amphibious armored personnel carrier built during the Soviet era. This is Scenario 1 on the Russian strategy on Ukraine. The Russian army is currently focused on closing the gap in Volchansk, a strategic area that plays a crucial role in their military objectives. The primary aim of the Russian forces is to secure this line by indirectly annexing the surrounding region, thereby strengthening their control and cutting off Ukrainian advances. In response, Ukrainian forces launched an attack, which according to Russian sources began in the early morning at around 7. This is the mechanized Ukrainian troops which reportedly crossed the border through this narrow area, initiating a counteroffensive designed to disrupt Russian plans. By executing this maneuver, the Ukrainians are strategically forcing the Russian military to redeploy personnel from Volchansk to the Kursk region, weakening the Russian presence in this area. One of the key objectives under this scenario is to create an opportunity for the Ukrainian army to retake Volchansk. By stretching Russian resources thin and compelling them to defend multiple fronts, the Ukrainians may gain the upper hand in this critical region. Ukraine also wants to hit Russian air base with ATACMS missiles because Russia has been dropping these devastating Fab 500 flying bombs using the Sukhoi 34 aircraft from this base. These aircraft have been wreaking havoc on Ukrainian forces with their devastating glide bombs, making the airbase a critical target in the conflict. The primary structure of this weapon is substantial, with the standard model weighing approximately 500 kilograms, which translates to 1,100 pounds. The most crucial component of the glide bomb is the Unified Gliding Correction Module. It has probably a Russian GLONASS guidance system, commonly referred to as the UMPK bomb kit, which ensures the bomb's desired trajectory and accuracy during deployment. Additionally, the tail stabilizer is an essential part of this glide weapon. It provides aerodynamic stability when dropped under gravity. At the forefront of the bomb is the fuse adapter, a critical component that houses the triggering mechanism. Positioned immediately behind the fuse adapter is the auxiliary booster, which plays a vital role in the activation of the TNT bomb. The Sukhoi Su-34 NATO reporting main fallback is a Soviet-origin Russian twin-engine all-weather supersonic medium-range fighter bomber or strike aircraft. Let's take a look at how this works in a super simplified animation. Step 1. Sukhoi fighter jets can approach a target closely, staying just outside the range of enemy air defense systems. Step 2. As soon as the pilot flips the switch, the bomb is released. The safety pin is pulled by gravity as the bomb falls. Step 3. Initially, the wing kit is upside down. Once the bomb is safely away from the fighter bomber, the wing kit slowly turns and deploys its wings, transforming the bomb into a glide weapon. This conversion gives it a range of up to 70 kilometers, which is approximately 43 miles. Step 4. The wings can make small, precise adjustments during flight, guided by the GLONASS, the Russian equivalent of GPS, directing